I'm really glad that Pablo got a job. So, I guess, this means our parental duties are over, right? Well, I don't think it's the end of everything. There are still a lot of times when we're going to be involved in as parents, such as when he gets married or when he has children. Oh, right. But I guess I'm okay without you. What do you mean by okay without you? Then my husband got up and returned to the living room after a while. I was shocked when I saw what he was holding. To my surprise, he brought me divorce papers. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been thinking to end things with you. When Pablo got a job, I've had to put up with a lot up until now, because I really needed a woman's help to raise my child. I'm sorry if you still have any illusions about our future together, but I can't stay married to you anymore. Wait a minute. Didn't you say that you wanted me to be Pablo's mother and be with you forever? Was that all a lie? Well, if I didn't say that, you would have hesitated to become his mother, wouldn't you? That's why I said it. You are awful. This is like marriage fraud. What are you talking about? We've been together for about 20 years. Marriage fraud is when someone hints at marriage, borrows money, and then suddenly disappears or backs out of the marriage. I didn't do that. I actually married you. So, stop calling me a fraud now. Besides, you've had your fair share of good times, thanks to me, so you should be happy. What on earth? Does Pablo know about this? Yeah, he knows. We just talked about it. What does Pablo think? He thinks it's better if we divorce, too. Perhaps he said that because he doesn't see you as his mother. He is my child by a former marriage, and not your child, so I don't think he actually felt any affinity for you. Pablo would never think like that. I've treated him as my own child from the start. When we first met, he was only 3, and he was so attached to me. Pablo would never say something like that. Well then, let's have a meal with Pablo sometime soon, the 3 of us. We can ask him again then, whether he considers you as a parent or not. And with that, the discussion for the day came to an end. I can't wrap my head around the idea of a divorce, because he told me this out of blue. I wonder if Pablo would really recommend our divorce. I can't imagine him saying that. However, he had been acting somewhat strange lately. Now that I think about it, it's been 20 years since Pablo and I first met. Looking back, it feels like those 20 years passed by in the blink of an eye. My husband's previous wife passed away when Pablo was just 1 year old. After that, the 2 who were left behind were on the verge of desperation for a while, but with the help of those around them, they managed to stand up again. And he proposed me, who worked at the same company as him. Of course, I knew that my husband's previous wife had passed away, and I was also aware that he had a child. There were people around us who were against the idea of us getting married, of course. Since it's your first marriage, you should marry someone who has never been married before. You're still young, and there's no need for you to dive into the sea of hardships. I still remember the various things people had said to me. However, I wanted to be by their side and support those 2 who had started walking forward again in the midst of despair. I wanted to be there for my husband and give all the love I could to Pablo. So, I had no hesitation in getting married. What surprised me was that my parents didn't oppose my marriage. I had thought they would. I later asked them why they didn't object, and my father said that as long as I was getting married to someone who I chose, then he was fine with it. My mother said that she would do the same thing if she were in my shoes, while laughing. Their support meant a lot to me, and it was a significant factor in my decision to get married. After that, my husband and I got married, and we started living together as a family with Pablo. I wasn't his biological mother, so at first, Pablo was wary of me. But over time, we bridged that gap. Even if we weren't a biological parent and child, I believed that we would become a family someday. With that in mind, I put in effort every day. By the time Pablo entered elementary school, he had started calling me mom, without hesitation. At that point, I felt like Pablo and I had built a relationship resembling that of a real parent and child. However, when he started middle school, he entered a rebellious phase. Advice that he would have once taken to heart was now met with complete resistance, and he gradually started displaying a defiant attitude towards me. I was having a hard time dealing with this side of Pablo, so I turned to my husband for advice, but he was completely unreliable. "Don't come to me for help. Pablo is your responsibility. You two need to talk it out and figure it out," he said. But he is your son, too. Aren't you pushing everything onto me? As a father, shouldn't you be more involved with your son? I countered. Enough. It's your responsibility as his mother, regardless. Blaming me is utterly presumptuous. He retorted. My husband and I had a disagreement about it, and we fought more and more often because of it. In such circumstances, the family dynamic was at its worst. I feared that our family might fall apart if things stayed this way. However, when Pablo entered high school, something unexpected happened. He started accompanying me when I went shopping for no apparent reason. He didn't elaborate on why, but simply said it was because he wanted to go outside. Despite that, our conversations increased, and we gradually started communicating better. I was very happy about it, but when Pablo went off to college, he decided to live on his own, leaving my husband and me alone. Having said that, my husband has prioritized work in his life, so when Pablo left for college, our lives didn't change much. By the way, I don't work. This was at my husband's request, and he had wanted me to focus solely on housework once we got married. My husband had somewhat old-fashioned beliefs, and he thought that women should stay at home while men worked. So, he didn't even allow me to take on part-time work. Certainly, with my husband's financial stability, there was no issue with me not working. However, looking back, I wish I had worked, even just part-time, and interacted with people. Well, it's undeniable that I was able to live comfortably all this time, thanks to my husband, though. Then, a few years later, when Pablo was a senior in college, he contacted us with exciting news. "I've landed a job with a local company, so I'll be coming back there," he said. "Really? That's wonderful. Congratulations," I exclaimed. Yeah. "I'll let you know when I'm coming back," he replied. So, we eagerly celebrated when Pablo returned home. He wasn't one to express his emotions openly, so he didn't jump for joy, but he did seem genuinely happy. However, a few days after Pablo started his new job, my husband said that he had something important to tell me. We rarely had conversations that weren't necessary, so I had no idea what he wanted to talk about. "Now that Pablo has a job, I think it's time to talk about us," he began. "About us? What do you mean?" I asked. "Do you ever think that, by staying together like this, we're both wasting our time?" he inquired. "What? What are you trying to say?" "I want a divorce." "Are you serious? Pablo just started his job, and you want us to split up now?" "It's precisely because Pablo got a job. I actually wanted to divorce much sooner. But I thought it wouldn't be good for Pablo, so I've put up with a lot up until today." "Wait a minute. What are we going to tell Pablo? If we divorce right after he gets a job, won't he blame himself that we couldn't get divorced because of him? Unfortunately, that won't happen. How can you be so sure? Well, actually, I asked Pablo before telling you. I asked him if he would be okay with you and me divorcing. And you know what? He said it's fine. Really? Now you know, so just sign here and submit it. I'll talk to Pablo first. Fine, whatever. But if you hear it from him directly, you'll be more devastated, won't you? He said that, but maybe my husband was lying. With that in mind, I decided to ask Pablo directly. On the agreed-upon day, I waited for Pablo at a coffee shop. I had a faint hope that Pablo wouldn't say such things, but... "Oh, yeah. I did say that," he replied. "You must be kidding. When I was old enough to understand, I found out that you weren't my real mom, and honestly, I couldn't accept it. From then on, I thought of you not as my mom, but more like, I don't know, someone in charge of taking care of the house or something. Pablo, I've always thought of you as my son. Seriously, you never thought of me as a parent? That's what I've been saying. I hate to break it to you, but I've never felt that way about you." That's unbelievable. While I was in shock, my husband showed up. That's why I told you. Pablo feels the same way. Do you get it now? You're no longer needed. So, let's divorce. Don't worry, Mom. I knew that you'd have to move out, so I rented an apartment in my name. You can live there. What? What a dutiful son he is. I was angry at my husband for making fun of me, but I was more shocked. The house Pablo had led me to was shabbier and dirtier than any place I had ever lived in. Is this the house I'll be living in? Yeah. Mom, you don't even have a job, right? So, this place is suitable for you. Dad covered the initial expenses, but from here on out, you'll have to pay for everything. Just try not to get kicked out. Wait, Pablo! Did you really mean it when you said earlier that you never considered me a parent? We may not be blood related, but the time we spent together wasn't a lie. Yet. You're so persistent. You could never be a real mother. Get it through your head. My husband's words conveyed his seriousness. But Pablo's expression seemed like he had something to say. In the end, without knowing what Pablo wanted to say, my husband and I divorced, and I began a life in this rundown place. However, life here was quite challenging. Noise from the neighbors and financial difficulties made it particularly tough. Even though I started working part-time, there was still no room for comfort. Starting over at my age was incredibly challenging. However, I was thankful that my husband covered the initial expenses. Besides, I might think this place is a nice home one day, just like they say home is where you make it. So, I lived my life with that in mind. About 2 months later, I heard a noise near the front door early in the morning. It sounded like someone had placed a bag there. I hurried to see what was happening, and found my son, who had come all the way to the house with a garbage bag to leave it in front of the house. I could see my ex-husband in the distance. I happened to pass by here. Can you throw away the trash for me? Pablo said. What? Why did Pablo bring the garbage all the way here and ask me to throw it away? What is he thinking? I wondered. Then, Pablo said, while looking a bit concerned about my ex-husband, "Oh, by the way, I accidentally threw away some important documents in the trash bag. Could you look for them? I'll come pick them up later." Search through this? Are you kidding? This is all garbage. I know. Well, I'm counting on you, Pablo said, not listening to my objections, and walked away. My ex-husband seemed to be mocking the situation. I did consider just throwing it away, since he did that, but I was also bothered by the fact that my son seemed concerned about his father. Pablo had just started his job, and if those documents were related to his work, it could be a problem. I had my motherly instincts, so I decided to search for the documents. However, there was something off about this garbage. I had initially thought it was filled with kitchen waste, but when I inspected it, there were a lot of documents, and they didn't look dirty. I had a strange feeling as I opened it, and to my surprise, I found money inside. Could it be that Pablo? Underneath the money, I noticed an envelope with "to Mom" written on it. Tears welled up in my eyes at that moment. The handwriting was unmistakably Pablo's. I decided to wipe away the tears and read the letter. To Mom, first, I'm really sorry for saying such terrible things. I told you that I never thought of you as my real parent that day, but the truth is, I've never felt that way, not even a bit. In fact, I've always respected you. Thank you so much for being mad at me and loving me with all your might, even though I'm not your real son. When I read those words, I could not read the words properly because of the tears. But if that's the case, why did he say such terrible things in the first place? The truth was written in the letter. Actually, as for Dad, he's having an affair. I've been keeping it a secret all along, and I'm sorry. Dad completely trusts me now, and he is going to introduce me to his affair partner soon. If I bring back evidence, I think you can claim alimony. Cheating after divorce is pointless, but if it's within the last 3 years, I think it'll work. Anyway, I'll contact you again. Mom, I'm sorry, but please stay there for a while. Dad is still cautious about you finding out about the affair. That's why he comes here every morning. So please stay there for a while longer. I'll definitely come to get you. That's what was written. Come to think of it, I realized that I had never paid the rent. Later, I found out that Pablo had been paying it all along. Even when I first moved into this house, he said it was in his name. I was so shocked by the divorce and being told that I wasn't considered a parent that I didn't even think about rent or anything else. Pablo had been looking out for me from the beginning. I thought it would have been easier if he had called me on my cell phone, but then I remembered that my husband and Pablo were living together. If he happened to see the messages, the whole plan would be ruined. Pablo was naturally cautious, and I think he considered that possibility. Even though I was already angry about my husband's infidelity, I knew that I wouldn't be able to gather any evidence if I let my emotions take over. Maybe that's why Pablo took those actions. I understood his feelings and sent him a message. I found the documents. Come pick them up when you have time. I'll keep them safe for you. And so, life went on as usual. 1 month later, Pablo came back to the house again. Mom, I'm sorry for the wait. I finally got the evidence, he said. In that moment, I hugged Pablo tightly. Thank you, thank you. Haha. Mom, I'm really sorry for everything up until now. I did things that were unforgivable towards you. Regardless of the reasons, I should have never said, I didn't consider you a parent. I just thought that it was the quickest way to catch Dad off guard. But still, I'm really sorry, he said. No, it's okay. I was just happy that you cared about me. Pablo seemed a little embarrassed. But, more importantly, it's the evidence of the affair. It includes all the evidence from before the divorce, Pablo said, handing me an envelope. But, Pablo, are you okay with this? Aren't you close to your dad? Well, if it was Dad before he cheated, I think I could have respected him. But that's a different story. If he cheated on you, when you were taking care of me even though I am not your real child, and doing the housework, I can't respect that. So even if you claim alimony, I think it's only fair, he replied. I understand, I said. With that, I claimed alimony from my husband and his partner through a lawyer. Of course, my husband contacted me. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding and asked for a chance to explain himself. He asked me to listen to him, as he'll bring Pablo as a witness. It seemed like my husband didn't realize that Pablo was on my side, and he was desperate. My husband, myself, and Pablo made time later to discuss the matter at my former home for the first time in a long time. As soon as the conversation started, my husband began making excuses. Well, she was a subordinate at work, and we often worked together on presentation materials. She can confirm that, he said. But, Dad, you've been to her place too, right? That's because we were working on presentation materials. You said you were working with a subordinate, but why would someone in your position be making presentation materials? Aren't you more on the receiving end of presentations? Well, my company is special, and... Oh, come on! All right, fine. I cheated, all right. You've got a problem with that? Perhaps my husband realized that there was no way out, and gave in to despair. What? Are you deflecting? Pablo, I thought you'd be on my side. But in the end, you prefer your mom, don't you? Well, I guess so. You've lived without knowing a mother's love. What did you say? If someone told you that the woman with whom you've been since you were born wasn't your mother, you wouldn't be able to wrap your head around it. Even so, you've considered Michaela as your mother, and lived that way until today, so it's only natural for you to take your mother's side, I guess. Dad, cut it out. If you keep talking about Mom like that, I won't stay silent either. What? You think you've grown up now that you're working? You've only been working for a year. Don't get too ahead of yourself. This was the first time I had seen my ex-husband and Pablo argue like this. I felt nothing but anger towards my ex-husband, but I was very happy about Pablo's feelings. How long do you think you can keep up this attitude? Huh? You've become depraved for speaking ill of not only me, but also Pablo. You are like that, and that's why you were deceived. Deceived? What are you talking about? Did you know that your affair partner is engaged now? What? Yes. Thanks to Pablo, I had learned that the woman with whom my ex-husband was having an affair was currently engaged to another man. My ex-husband was being two-timed by the woman. When I showed him the evidence, he collapsed to his knees. But she said she wants to marry me. Well, there are people who like to date someone who is older than them, so I won't deny that. However, it looks like she chose a younger person with money over an older man with money like you. So lame. Ugh. You can take your time and regret this in the future. Maybe you've learned that if you betray someone, you'll be betrayed in return in the end. With this incident came to a close. After then, I claimed alimony from my ex-husband and his affair partner. Furthermore, I informed her fiancé about her affair with my ex-husband. Naturally, their engagement was called off, and both the woman and my husband were also faced with alimony claims from her ex-fiancé. She is working again tonight, but her earnings are far from enough, and it seems she resorted to borrowing money from risky sources. However, her debt hasn't decreased at all, even though she has been paying back. My ex-husband, on the other hand, was working part-time secretly beside his full-time job, even though his company had a policy against it, and they found it out, and they reduced his salary. Because of this, his income became insufficient for living expenses, and he resorted to taking on debt as well. However, he's been struggling just to pay off the interest, and I've heard that he can hardly afford to eat now. I left the rundown house I was living in and started living with Pablo. Now I look forward to my son's return every day, not my husband. Even if we aren't biologically related, as long as the time we spend together and the love we share are genuine, nothing else matters. I'm going to continue being a part of Pablo's life as his mother for many years to come.